I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with the head. Intercepted. 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, live on YouTube today. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Devin Wanish. And today, we are right back where we were this time a week ago, talking about the quarterback position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On top of that, the Buccaneers are fresh off their fourth win in a row. A team that looked dead in the water at 4-7 just a month ago is now 8-7. And one win away from shoring up the NFC South for the third straight season. So with 2 games left on the schedule, both of them in the NFC South, the Bucs definitely have the most control over their playoff fate that they've had all year. It's an incredibly exciting time of season, and the Bucs have made it so with some excellent play on both sides of the ball. We'll dive into that and more. But first and foremost, Evan, happy holidays. How you doing?
Yes, hope everyone had a lovely Christmas, spending time with your families and everything. And yeah, we're not quite done with, I guess, I don't know. Do you consider New Year's like a holiday? Like, do you consider that part of the holidays, or the holidays done?
Yes, I guess. People say Happy New Year. They go out of their way to wish
I mean,
you a
I
Happy
guess
New
like
Year.
if you think about like kids and stuff that are like in grade school and stuff, like their winter break doesn't end until after New Year's,
Yeah.
so. I guess,
I would.
yeah, but I mean, hey, the Buccaneers gave the Jaguars a lump of coal, and they gave Bucs fans a bunch of gifts, and the Jaguars were giving the Buccaneers gifts in the form of turnovers. They were giving the Buccaneers a bunch of presents in that sense, but yeah, I mean, obviously, we were talking a little bit before we came on here, and we talked about Green Bay last week, and how you thought that it was their most complete game. But we also said, well, this defense left a little bit to be desired against Green Bay. Jordan Love had some time. He threw for darn near 300 yards, this and that. Like, Jordan Love, the defense didn't quite pass the eye test. Only allowing 20 points was good, but it didn't quite pass the eye test. This week, it was the opposite. This week, it was truly a full-on, all-around team performance by both the offense and the defense. The offense playing efficient, being great on third downs, being good in the red zone, and the defense forcing turnovers, getting sacks, just flying all over the place, early and often, too. It started way early, Neither side of the ball got off to a slow start. I mean, the Buccaneers went down there, scored 3 points, and the Bucs defense responded with an interception. They got off to a fast start, and they sort of didn't look back until then. It was over pretty quickly, to be honest with you.
Yeah, 21 points alone in that first half off of turnovers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 4 takeaways from this Buccaneers defense, 4 sacks as well, really taking it to an injured Trevor Lawrence, who did not play well. And you could tell he just never had time to get comfortable. He wasn't very composed. The Bucs brought the pressure early and often, and this was complimentary football at its finest. This is the game that, even though we did have Green Bay last week, we were sitting there asking ourselves, how much better can it get than this? The next week, I think the Bucs probably executed the best game they have all season from the perspective of both sides of the football. We can probably gripe about the run game, which I believe only right around 70 yards rushing on the ground on 25 carries, which isn't ideal. But when you've got Baker Mayfield dealing for another week in a row and the Bucs just making it look as easy as they did in that first half, at one point in the third quarter, the game was 30-0. Final score is 30-12, but it may as well have been 30-0 because the 2 mercy touchdowns that Jacksonville got late in the game was against a lot of the Bucs' second and third stringers, seemingly.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it was just it did feel at halftime. It felt kind of similar to the Bills game in 2021 and the Bengals game in 2022. And the 2 things that those have in common are the Buccaneers built leads against an AFC team. And they were both at home. They built big leads at the half. but then in the second half kind of crumbled. Now they went into overtime against the Bills and beat the Bills, but then they lost to the Bengals. And I kind of had that feeling. I was like, man, is this one going to be close? I was like, we'll have to wait and see. Like at 20-0, like I was like, yeah, they're playing well, but like Jacksonville gets the ball to start the second half. Like what's going to happen there? But it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that this wasn't going to be the case, and the Jags just didn't have it today. And it I think I believe it was a turnover, I believe, right? The Antoine Winfield interception, I believe, was like the third or fourth play of the second half for Jacksonville. And at that point, I was like, okay, I don't really think Jacksonville's got it today, and that this is just how it's going to go for them. But yeah, it was nice to see, like you said, an all-around performance especially from the defense. I think that's the most encouraging thing. The offense has been trending upwards for a while now. The defense has been the thing that has worried me the most, because this defense, was not playing playoff quality football at all for a long time, really. I mean, Gardner Minshew had their way with them. Desmond Ridder had a really good day against them. Despite the Bucs winning that game, Desmond Ridder had a nice day against them. Jordan Love had a nice day against them. So you wanted to see the defense bounce back. I know Trevor Lawrence wasn't 100%, but he still is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I think the Jaguars have one of the better coaching staffs in the NFL. So yeah, this was a pretty impressive win, especially on the defensive side of things.
Yeah, not only has the point total been going up every week, but the quality of opponents that the Bucs have put away has gone up every single week. We said how important it was before this game how the Bucs looked against the Jacksonville team, because listen, I'm not going to make any excuses, because Trevor Lawrence played. He may not have been healthy, and he may be playing.
He was out there.
He may be playing terrible this year when he's out there playing through injury, but he traveled with the team. He cleared concussion protocol, and he went out there and started. That's their franchise quarterback, and the Bucs made them look lifeless. That's awesome. This is a win that we have been waiting for all season, and the Bucs are getting hot at the right time. One of the hottest teams in the NFL throughout the month of December, and the ebbs and flows of the NFL season are clearly in full effect, and whatever process Dave Canales and Todd Bowles have been cooking with this Buccaneers offense seemingly is getting prepared at the right time. I'm excited to see it. Now, one of the biggest reasons the Bucs offense has looked the way that it has is the quarterback play. We can deny it no longer. Evan, your favorite player on the Buccaneers roster, Baker Mayfield, over the past 2 weeks, we got to talk about his performance. He has completed 48 of 63 passes at 76.2 percentage for 664 yards and 6 TDs with no interceptions. Last week, NFC Player of the Week, a perfect passer rating, and a historic performance in Lambeau Field. Some would say his best career game. How does he follow it up? Well, he's magic again. 26 of 35 for 283, 2 touchdowns to Mike Evans in that game against Jacksonville, and he looked comfortable. He looked good. And what I like from what I have seen from Baker Mayfield is not only is he playing the best football of the season at the best time of the season, you really cannot ask for much better quarterback play in the month of December, but he's shown me he can bounce back from a slump. We had a podcast, 2-3 weeks ago, talking about the potential of Baker Mayfield coming back to Tampa Bay on a contract extension beyond the 2023 season. The way he has played since then, the way that he has played since calling the team out, asking where the accountability was in this locker room, the Bucs are not only undefeated since then, and yeah, we can look at Carolina and in the Atlanta game and say that maybe those weren't his strongest games of the year. The last interception he threw was in that Carolina game, December 3rd, almost a month ago. So, you can nitpick on those games, but even at the end of that Atlanta game, you could argue the catalyst was that game-winning drive. He delivered when he needed to. Plays a career game on the road in Lambeau in December against the Packers, and obviously puts the whooping on Jacksonville last night. If I'm the Bucs, I know we've talked a lot about rookie quarterbacks, and I know we can go back and forth all day, and we're going to open up the phone lines on this show as well, so for anybody on hold, we will get to you here shortly. We appreciate your patience. If I'm the Bucs, or rather, if I'm Baker Mayfield, it would almost be disrespectful at this point for the Bucs to really not take a look at this guy and offer him an extension. And that's why I think these last 2 weeks especially, it's hard to argue that he hasn't earned an extension. And I think after these last 2 weeks, the Bucs have little to no problem paying him the money that he's probably going to get. Now, the other question is also, how do they pay him? Are they going to give him a 2-3 year extension, or is he a candidate for the franchise tag? How does that work, Evan?
I think the other question is like, yeah, you can say all the right things and everything, and Ian Rappaport said, oh, there's mutual interest in him coming back. Look, at the end of the day, like that might change if he enters free agency and some team offers him a contract that he's like, whoa, so that could always change. But I mean, the difference between these past 2 weeks and the weeks against Carolina and Atlanta were okay. They beat Carolina, they beat Atlanta, but you didn't feel great about the team. But just specifically for me, I didn't feel great about the quarterback because they won, but Baker Mayfield really didn't play well. And he didn't play well against the worst team in the NFL, Carolina. And then I think he played even worse against Atlanta. But like you said, when it counted, he made the plays and stepped up in the final drive there with two, pretty huge throws, which I still think is the defining moment of the Bucs season right now. I don't know if there would have been any recovering from that. I really don't. I think the Green Bay game probably goes differently if they lose the Atlanta game, and I think this game might go differently if they lose the Atlanta game. I just think it wouldn't have been good. So to make those clutch throws and get that win was massive. But the difference between the past 2 weeks is the Bucs are winning, and he looks like fantastic. I mean, he's making all the right decisions. He's got good zip on the ball. The accuracy's been there. I mean, that throw to Mike Evans they made on the second touchdown, that's one of his best balls of the year. That was just an absolute rope right in there. And it was, I mean, the throw to Payne Durham was pretty good. Durham made a nice catch, but it was still a good throw. It just seems more comfortable in the offense, which, I mean, is strange to say, a day after Christmas, but it just seems like, just like you said earlier, they're clicking at the right time. And December football, and as it gets later into December, that's when you want to be playing your best football. And right now, the Bucs are playing their best football, especially on offense. The defense, even though they have had, it was one good performance here, you'd like to see it on a consistent basis now. But the offense seems to really be on a roll and getting the guys really involved. So, I mean, Baker Mayfield was really good against Jacksonville. And he did all the right things, protected the football, made the plays, and didn't just manage the game. He took control of the game. And the Buccaneers actually, I believe it was either their first 5 or 6 plays were actually passing plays. They didn't even try to run the ball. So when you say, the run game, was a little bit, to be desired. Yeah, but at the same time, like we talked about on the game preview show, the Jags had the 29th ranked pass defense. So that's talking about, attacking a weakness of a defense there. And that's what you want to see there from Dave Canales as well. So I thought Baker Mayfield played well, and you're hoping that he can do it again this week, because this is a massive one, to be able to head into that Week 18 game against Carolina without any pressure on you would be just massive for this football team. Because if you lose against New Orleans, then, like you got to beat Carolina, and you got to hope, because if you don't, then if New Orleans wins, you're out of you might be out of the playoffs altogether. So, all focus has got to be on New Orleans this week, and you got to play your best ball there. But I mean, 2 straight weeks, he's arguably, I mean, I wouldn't even say arguably. He's played his 2 best games as the Buccaneer in 2 straight weeks now. So hopefully he can make it a third.
Absolutely. I will say this as well. We talk about the importance of December football, especially for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who this time a month ago, we were talking about a team who was just lifeless. Like, I mean, it was an awful, awful middle stretch of the season. It cannot get much worse than how it went for the Bucs. When you lose 6 out of your 7 games, you're more than likely not going to be a team that makes the postseason. It's just not the way that it works. Now, luckily, the Bucs have gotten some help from not only a weak NFC in general, but a weak NFC South, just 1 game away from clinching that NFC South division. Let's get to our first call here. You're live on the Can of Fire podcast. We appreciate your patience. What's your name?
My name is Shane from West Tennessee. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Love the show. Man, it's time right here today we give this offensive line some credit, man. They are getting better every game. And looking back at last year, they actually cost us probably 3 or 4 games alone.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line has been a strength for sure.
Yeah, I mean
Luke Gedeke plugged in. I mean, gosh.
Yeah, they even got better based off of where they were last week. Regardless of Baker having a perfect game, they gave up 5 sacks last week, only 2 this week to the Jaguars pass rush, which we had talked about before the game. The effectiveness of Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen was going to be huge in that game. And yeah, I thought they looked pretty good. You know, there was the 1 sack, I think the first one, where Baker just couldn't really get away. And I don't really know what to blame that on. It seems like we're overthinking here if we blame it on anything other than just a pocket collapse. But you could argue the other one was Baker holding on to the ball too long. But at the end of the day, like, this offensive line has been as good as they have needed to be with the weaknesses that they knew they were going to have headed into the season. But Evan, it also begs the question, how different is it going to look next season? Because I think the Bucs like Cody Mauch at guard. I think they definitely like Luke Gedeke at right tackle, Tristan Wirfs at left tackle, but you got to think center and left guard. Even with Aaron Stinney playing the way that he has, I think there's going to be some moving around, if not some new personnel.
Yeah, so this is where, with our shows or whatever, you can start to see, I understand they're probably going to make the playoffs, and we'll have a playoff game to talk about, like the off-season talk and stuff. But, yeah, left guard and center are probably 2 areas they might look to upgrade. Left guard, Stinney's fine. Just don't know if Stinney's a long-term option there. I mean, I believe he's like 28 or 29 years old already, so don't really know if he's the long-term solution there. And also, they've given him plenty of opportunities to be that long-term starter there, and he hasn't quite seized it. I know he had the injury, but I don't know how high they are on him long-term. So yeah, you could see, but like you said, I agree. The left side with Wirfs, left tackle, right tackle with Gedeke, right guard with Mauch is pretty set in stone, and it's a big reason. Just like the caller said, big reason why the Buccaneers offense has played better. I think if this offensive line would be struggling right now, I think you'd see a quarterback that would be struggling, a play caller that would be straight. A poor offensive line just makes everything more difficult. It makes everything more difficult to do. You can't run an offense if your offensive line sucks, because you always have to account for that. Oh, okay, we're going to draw this play, but the quarterback probably won't have time. Or, oh, we can't open up running lanes in the run game, so we're one-dimensional that way. And then you're one-dimensional, and pass rushers can just tee off on your poor offensive line. So, yeah, I agree. The offensive line definitely has been a strength, I think, really the whole season, but more so, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 weeks all year where you could argue they were a liability and they were a reason the offense wasn't having much success. But any final thoughts before we let you go, my friend?
No, just one thing. Evan said a couple of shows ago, y'all were discussing maybe Mayfield just maybe wasn't the guy that could lead us to the Super Bowl. I think the right skill positions, I like his energy. I want him to stay around Tampa. I love him.
I like him a lot, too. We're going to dive a little bit more into the Baker conversation here, but we appreciate your call, my friend. Go Bucs.
Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Thanks.
So, Evan, I meant to ask you at the top of the show, but I will ask you now. Are you ready to stop denying it? Are you ready to embrace Baker Mayfield as the future quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Because, I have been publicly on the fence all year. Like, we have had conversation after conversation, and I have been the guy, more so than you, to be fair, who has weighed out the pros and the cons of what we have seen week to week. I mean, we've talked about this guy so much, but after last week and the week before, I mean, after the Packers game, I was ready to buy in, but after that follow-up performance against Jacksonville, I know they were injured. Next man up. Doesn't matter. That was the best team the Bucs had left on their schedule, and they were
29th ranked pass defense.
Okay. So, I tweeted out, quote, "I have seen enough. Baker Mayfield is my quarterback. I'm ready to stop denying it. It is what it is. I'm on the Baker train," because I think the most likely scenario after this late season performance in the December that the Bucs have had is a long-term extension. 2-3 years, not like a 5-year deal. But what are your thoughts on Baker overall? Have they changed? Are you still a denier?
Oh no, okay. See, the thing about me with Baker, like, everybody just completely, if you don't say you love Baker, that means you hate Baker. I don't hate Baker Mayfield. Like, I don't. Saying that when the Buccaneers are 4-7 and they're picking ninth overall, that they'd be better off selecting a franchise quarterback rather than signing Baker Mayfield. Yeah, like that's not like it's my opinion, like it's like the Hannibal Buress thing. Like, why are you bullying me? I'm right, But I mean, Baker Mayfield, I'm going to say this. To me, he has earned the right to be this team starter in 2024. Beyond that, we'll see. I'm not saying another 1 year deal because that would be perfect, I think, but I don't think he's going to accept another 1 year deal. So it's going to have to be multiple years. I would guess, and I think I've said this before, I would guess he's probably going to want 3. I guess the Bucs would probably be more comfortable with 2. Just my guess. Or I mean, if it is 3, it's something to where like they can basically get out of it after 2024 or something if it goes awry, But I think, he has played well enough to earn the right to be the starter in 2024. And the last 2 weeks have validated that for sure. But at the same time, like the Bucs have to be careful. Like I think both things can be true. Like they have to be careful. Yeah, it's just like yeah, you're fine with a 2 to 3 year deal. How would you feel about a 5 year deal where like, oh yeah, the Bucs can't get out? Like it's like Derek Carr. Oh, the Bucs can't get out of this thing for at least another 3 seasons. Like you might be like, okay, yeah, Baker's played well, but there'd be a part of you, there would have to be a part of a lot of Bucs fans that are a little bit like, yeah, But I the thing is that he has earned that right, and to be this team starter, I expect it to be a 2 year deal. Honestly, I think it's probably going to be more than we've been thinking all year because of these last 2 performances. I mean, unless it just absolutely collapses down the final 3 games of the season, then the conversation changes. But I think it's going to be in the 25 to $30 million a year range now. That doesn't mean, if they have $60 million minus 30 of that, like, no, like his cap hit's going to be different and stuff. But yeah, I think he has earned the right to be this team starter in 2024 for sure.
You can't fault the Bucs for putting themselves in a situation where here we are in December and everything has gone according to plan. Like they signed.
Shout out to Jason Light.
Yeah,
Shout
absolutely.
out to that is fantastic. Just fantastic value. I mean, unbelievable to find a quarterback that's being this productive for a 1 year deal for $4 million. Now I know he's probably going to reach most of his incentives, so it'll be more like $8 million. But to do that in a year where like people were like, oh yeah, how you gonna, Tom Brady's gone and you're gonna suck, like. To do that, it is basically like, it's very impressive to be able to do that. And then I see in the chat here, our buddy Army John 85 says, give him 3 years, 50 million with incentives. It's gonna take more than that. I mean, 3 years, 50 million roughly is like a little over 16 million a year.
I think he's gonna get closer to 30.
Yeah, he's going to get closer to 30 because there will be some other team that offers him more than that. Yeah.
Brad Spielberger from PFF said it better than I could. The Bucs front office deserves a ton of credit for how they handled 2023. They took all their lumps in one season with over $81 million in dead cap, the most in the NFL. Another draft class looks promising in 2023, as good as any team in the draft over the last half decade. When we talk about the talent level, the guys that are still on this team, the guys that are about to be paid, Antoine Winfield Jr., Tristan Wirfs, and not far behind that, we're talking about this incredibly impressive rookie season by both Kalijah Kancey and now Yaya Diaby. Yaya Diaby, who leads the team in sacks, who played a quarter of the season and leads the team in sacks. This guy is ridiculous. You get Baker Mayfield for 1 year, $4 million, set to win your third straight division title. I know a lot of people a month ago, damn, myself, I can't sit here and deny that I said on this podcast I think the Bucs would be better off without Todd Bowles. But you cannot fault this team for putting themselves in the best case scenario. The best case scenario for Jason Light, for the Bucs, and for building this team with the money that they have. Maybe a rookie quarterback because you don't have to shell out the money that you're about to pay Baker Mayfield. But we also know they're moving on from Devin White. I feel like this was the best possible case scenario for the expectations that were burdened on this Bucs team in 2023. People picked them to win 2-3 games, and they're about to make the postseason.
You're more of, obviously, way more of an optimist than I am, and you predicted them to win 7 games. They've already won 8. So like, I mean, they have exceeded, I think, even the most expectations. Like, I don't think, like, if you would have told me this Bucs team would have gone 10-7, I'd be like, oh man, I'd be like, all right, like, a lot of things have to go right. And like, the thing is, like, things have gone right. Things have gone right for them, but like at times things have gone wrong. Like, this team lost what, 4 straight games?
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the season. Like, yeah, sure, things have gone right for them, but at the same time, like, I mean, a few bounces go their way, like they could be even better. A few bounces don't go their way, they lose a few of them games. But like that's the NFL.
We were walking a dangerously fine line of blowing this entire thing up. The Bucs were 1 loss away from everyone just kind of, giving up on this thing, giving up on this regime, moving on from Todd Bowles officially. If they had lost to Carolina, that would have been it. It would have been it for this regime. It would have been it for this coaching staff. Would have been it for Baker. I imagine some of your free agents are still going to stick around, but the way that you build this team is eventually going to be around a rookie quarterback if they lose that game to Carolina. Because you're pretty much out of playoff contention at that point. You have lost 7 of your last 8.
If they lost to Carolina, that would have been trash time.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But here we are with Baker Mayfield on pace for right around 30 touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions on the year, which, again, I said at the beginning of the year, the best possible case scenario for me, in my opinion, of Baker coming in here, his first year in a new offense with a first-year play caller. I expected a year. I said if you can get like 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions from Baker Mayfield, that is a successful season. We have gotten beyond that. He is probably going to throw for over 4,000 yards, north of 30 touchdowns.
He's going to throw for more than the 28 touchdowns. Yeah.
He's going to throw that. For the Bucs offense to have any sort of positive momentum, what else did we need to go right? We needed Rhett White to take a huge step in his development as a running back. And look at the second half of the season he has had. There has been some weeks this year where he's our entire offense. You needed
slot receiver, basically.
Yeah, you needed Mike Evans at north of 30 years old to prove that he was still a productive part of this offense, because he's one of the lone veterans and the longest tenured piece of this Bucs offense, and he's having one of his best career seasons. The guy leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns. The offensive line, you needed Tristan Wirfs to play well at left tackle, and while he's been playing injured Tristan Wirfs at left tackle is seemingly better than 65% of most left tackles in the NFL. You needed Luke Gedeke to translate well to right tackle. He has done that and then some. You needed Cody Mauch to come around, and yeah, he's had some rough weeks. This interior offensive line has been a weakness at time, but I think you've got to like the development you've seen from Cody Mauch. He is a mauler. He is physical in the run game for the Bucs, and he has been a big reason why the second half of this season we've seen the run game open up and Rhett White get more impressive and complementary football finally start to come into play for this Buccaneers football team. Last week against Jacksonville was obviously their opus on the season as far as execution. I'm so excited about the direction of this team. And yes, it was a nice thought. It was a nice hypothetical situation to sit around and talk about a rookie quarterback.
Oh, at the time, it was a fair thought.
It was. It was. We were doing our due diligence because, like I said, the Bucs were 1 loss away from basically us just, hanging our hat on potentially getting a top 10 pick, which would get you a franchise QB. But with Baker Mayfield playing the best that he possibly could have, I am excited I hate to say I'm excited to see Todd Bowles back in Tampa Bay, but more so than that, I don't want to really put Todd over that much, but more so than that, I'm excited to see another year of this offense. I'm excited to see what Rhett White looks next year. I'd argue that we re-sign Chase Edmonds because he has been the running back too that we have been looking for 3 seasons now. I'd argue he comes back. I'm impressed to see what this offense can become with Baker Mayfield at the helm. Now that we know the Bucs have their answer at quarterback, they know how to build around him. And I'd like to see the evolution of this offense especially. And I know we talked about the regression of the defense as well. We can probably talk a little bit more of that topic here in a minute. But they've been playing well. Played one of their best games of the month last weekend against Jacksonville. So, again, it's exciting to get excited about where this Bucs team is trending. And going back to Baker Mayfield, Can you win a Super Bowl with him? I don't know. But I'd argue they can win a playoff game with him. Hell, I'd argue, maybe, this might sound crazy, I'd argue they could win 2. But if you can get some consistency around this guy who has already shown you he can shine after everything he's been through, I think it's going to be the best thing for the Bucs moving forward. And we'll see how long it lasts. We'll see how consistent Baker Mayfield can be, especially in the 2024 season. We'll see what this conversation looks like a year from now. But I am excited about where this team is headed. And I think having consistency with a team that has not had it, a franchise that just simply has not had it over the course of their existence, I think it's going to be a really good thing. I do. I'm buying it. $5 super chat from King James 813, Antoine Winfield Jr. for All Pro. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I also wanted to bring up King James says basically when we were talking about the Mayfield thing, he says 3 years, 85 million, 45 guaranteed. That's more, I think, more like it. I think that's what, a little over 28. So I think that's more like it. And I think the Bucs may approach Mayfield and be like, hey, we'll give you a little bit of a higher cap number if you go maybe less years. Like I could see that. Maybe like, hey, we'll get to over 30 if you do 2 years to give that the Bucs just in case, things don't go well in 2024, 2025, they're not completely like just strapped with this terrible contract. I do think that something like that I think would make sense. But yeah, appreciate the $5 super chat. If they now Chuck asked if they re-sign Baker, what do you do with Trask next season? Trask is just a cheap backup. He's still under contract for next season, so he's a cheap backup quarterback. And yeah, obviously you don't know what he is, and look, if Baker Mayfield goes down and Kyle Trask has to come in week 2 and play 6 straight games, yeah, the Bucs probably ain't going nowhere that season. But we always said this with Tom Brady. Like, if Tom Brady went down, the season was over anyway. Like, it didn't matter. If Tom Brady went down for an extended period of time, the season was done. If Baker Mayfield goes down, which Baker Mayfield have an injury history, like it could happen. If Baker Mayfield goes down, like, yeah, for an extended period of time, the season's probably over. So I would much rather have Kyle Trask making whatever, a little, like not even $1 million, rather than paying a backup quarterback $5 million. Like, that's what they paid Baker Mayfield, basically. So, $5 super chat from Charles Jansen. Thank you very much. Keep in mind, Baker has never had same OC and HC 2 years in a row. He reminds me of Brad Johnson. They can win a Super Bowl with the right cats around him. The tough thing, and we've talked about this a lot, the tough thing that when you bring up the Brad Johnson thing and, Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl, it was 20 years ago. Right, like that's the thing. I do think Baker Mayfield could probably win you a playoff game. I don't know about 2. I don't know about 2, but he's shown that you can win you a playoff game. Like he did it with Cleveland. Now, did he single-handedly do that? No. The Browns defense forced 5 turnovers, but I do think that Mayfield can have success. Whether he can win a Super Bowl or not, I don't know. And I just think bringing up Brad Johnson as the comparison, just because that is a completely different era of football. And you need a quarterback nowadays to do so much more than you did 20 years ago that it just, and also that 2002 defense, like this Bucs defense is nowhere near that. So like, yeah, like you need a lot. And, we'll have to wait and see. Let's see. Yeah. So, we appreciate the super chat. Let's see how Baker finishes the season before we decide if he deserves another contract. I mean, I get it, and I know you're not alone, Richard, for sure. But at this point, just looking at it, he probably has earned that in the eyes of the Bucs. I think it would have to be.
I think it would take an absolute
assuming they make the playoffs, right? They have 3 more games. It would have to be pretty rough.
It would have to be
or if they lose 2 straight here and Mayfield's just like terrible, then you're like, oh.
It would have to be an all-time fumbling of the bag. I mean, he would have to go out and play like absolute garbage for 2 weeks in a row,
and they would have to lose both games. Probably.
I wanna believe he's better than that. I just said at the beginning of the show that I have bought in, so I think he is better than that, and I do not think the odds favor him going and playing like garbage 2 weeks in a row. But these are also 2 division games, 2 teams that you have beat already. So Jacksonville was probably the toughest team they had left on the schedule, but New Orleans not very far behind as far as terms of importance, in terms of just how tough we really kind of think it's going to be. I know they brought Jacksonville behind the woodshed, but who saw that coming, really? I predicted it to be a pretty good day throwing the football, and I thought
we
the
both
offense
predicted
was
the Bucs to win, not win that way.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be 30-0 in that third quarter. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of game it is against New Orleans, but the Bucs also have home field advantage, their final home game of the year, barring a playoff appearance.
So Charles Jansen with another $5 super chat, appreciate it. Said, how have our first round QBs picks we drafted worked out for us? See, to me, that doesn't. So, like, if that's the logic, though, you should never, ever, ever draft a QB in the first round ever again. Like that there's no correlation there between Josh Freeman, Jameis Winston, and the next guy you draft. Like,
I think there's
no connection there.
I think it's just the ultimate argument of, we can talk all day about a rookie quarterback, but talking about a rookie quarterback does not mean it's a sure thing. And that's what a lot of people also want to say.
No, for sure.
With Baker Mayfield, to a degree, you know what you have. We know what this guy's ceiling looks like. We definitely know what his floor looks like after a full season in Tampa Bay. So he's an established veteran. You kind of know what to expect. With a rookie, you've got no idea. No idea. You really don't. You could get C.J. Stroud, or you could get Jamarcus Russell. Like, it really seems like there's one of 2 ways that could go. And on top of that, the patience to develop that player is going to have to be had as well. And we're talking about Mike Evans, who is playing, at 30-plus years old, likely going to get a contract extension for Tampa Bay. What if the Bucs draft a first-round rookie, and knowing their luck, they get the one ass bucket quarterback from this draft class, and you have to waste the rest of Mike Evans' career waiting for a QB to develop who never does?
Why are you assuming that, though?
I'm not assuming anything. I'm just asking. Like,
are you saying a lot of people want to assume that they say, oh, you want to assume that a first round.
So do you want to assume? So do you want to assume?
You're going to assume that a rookie quarterback's going to be a franchise guy, right? No, okay, but I'm not going to assume he's going to be terrible either. Like, I don't, and also I think you made the point a few weeks ago. Like, you think the Bills are angry that they had to be patient with Josh Allen?
Right.
You think that the Chiefs are like, man, we had to wait freaking a year to start Patrick Mahomes? What a wasted draft pick! Like, no, like they don't care. Like it's to me, it's and again, and it's all probably like, it's a moot point for this year, right? Because like I don't think they're going to be drafting a quarterback. I mean, if the opportunity presents itself, I think that depends on the contract that Baker Mayfield receives. I think that'll tell you a lot about their plans. If it's like it's a 2-year deal, but it's like a 1-year deal, maybe they draft a quarterback in the first round then. But my thing is, like, the explanation to not draft a QB in the first round. Your explanation is, oh, the Bucs have never drafted a good QB in the first round. Okay, like, what does that matter?
I think that is just support in the main argument that I brought up, and the fact that you never really know. There's never a first round QB. You don't know,
but the ceiling is much higher too, though.
One would argue, yes.
I mean, the ceiling is much higher. Like, I mean, who do you think has more potential to get to a Super Bowl? Baker Mayfield or C.J. Stroud?
You're asking me this right now? Like right now, with what we know about
I'm not even necessarily talking about just this season, specifically. Over their career, who has more potential to go to a Super Bowl?
You're going to get mad at me.
You're just going to be lying to yourself.
How?
Because you just came off of 2 straight weeks where he's playing great and Stroud didn't play at all. Stroud's 22. Mayfield's going to be 29. Hasn't even gotten to an AFC Championship game yet. Stroud was getting MVP talk in his rookie season. It's just, I understand there's obviously, sure, right? For as many CJ Strouds as there are, for as many Josh Allens, Patrick Mahomes, there is Mitchell Trubisky's, right? There is, and I mean, Bryce Young, people say, oh, Bryce Young is the first overall. It's way too early for Bryce Young. Like, it's way too early for that guy. But like, yeah, there's Mitchell Trubisky's and there's Blake Bortles. Yeah, like there's Josh Rosen. Like, there's plenty of those guys, right? But for as many of those guys, there's also the Joe Burrows and like, yes, Lamar Jackson was the 32nd overall pick. He was still picked in the first round. Like, and everybody looks at, whoa, look at Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy, that's an exception. Like, Dak Prescott is an exception. Even Jalen Hurts in the second round is an exception. Now, if you could find a guy like Derek Carr in the second round, like obviously not Derek Carr now, but like for a second round pick, Derek Carr has had a pretty good, solid career, like a pretty good career for a second round pick. But like I said, I think that the point is moot, at least for this season, because I don't think the Buccaneers are going to be looking to. I don't think it's out of the question. I think it all depends on who's on the board, of course, but I don't think the Buccaneers are going to be looking to do that with a rookie quarterback, at least not yet.
I agree with what we know about the most likely case being Baker Mayfield signing a contract extension. I feel like this rookie quarterback conversation for the Bucs, it ended after that Green Bay game, and I think it ended even more after the performance against Jacksonville. And we just talked about the potential of Baker playing so bad here to finish the regular season that the Bucs could not look to give him a second look, but that would also mean that they missed the postseason. They don't have it shored up, so I don't want to sit here and talk like they're going to make the postseason 100%, but you have to believe with what we have seen from this team. I have gotten to the point where I can buy in just enough to think they're going to win one of these next two games. If they lose in New Orleans and they split the series, I am not going to be upset. We got a $5.10 super chat from Charles Jansen, his third of the show. Thank you, Charles. I really do appreciate it. He said Joe Montana was a third-round pick.
That was 40 years ago. I don't like, yeah, sure. Like I'm not saying it's impossible. Just say one example from 40 years ago isn't going to change my mind. Like, your success rate outside the first round is lower. Like it just is. Russ Weeks said, would you have taken Will Levis? No, I would not have. I thought the Buccaneers made the right call passing on Will Levis at 19th overall. I wasn't a huge fan of Will Levis. And also, like, I have to be a fan of the quarterback too. I'm not just saying, oh, draft any guy in the first round. No, like, I'm not saying that. I have to be a fan of the guy. I'm just saying it's not the worst case scenario.
You're on the Can of Fire podcast. Hello, who's this?
My name's Angel. How are you guys?
Doing good. How you doing?
Good. Just listening in on the podcast right now, and I had to try on the whole Baker Mayfield contract situation, and I just figured I'd get your guys' opinion on the Mike Evans situation. Do you think how the season ends will impact whether he stays or goes? Assuming that we make the playoffs.
Assuming that we make the playoffs, I think this late season surge by Mike Evans, especially leading the NFL in touchdowns, is going to go a long way in what other teams are going to offer him. Because, I mean, at this rate, it's kind of a foregone conclusion the Bucs are just going to let him hit the market. They're going to let him see what other teams think he's worth, and I'm sure that at the end of the day, that's what he wants as well. So it may have upped his price tag as far as what we thought it was going to be this time, like 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. I was thinking maybe early 20s, 23, 24, but he could get 26, 27. And I think the Bucs would be ready to pay him that. But the way that they address it is also going to be interesting. They can save a little bit of cap space this year if they decide to sign Tristan Wirfs to an extension. So that's going to be something to monitor because they technically don't have to do that until next year, but they would save a hell of a lot of money this year if they did it. So depending on the moves that they make leading up to it, it'll be interesting because they'll have a lot of time to kind of decide if bringing Mike back is something they want to do. But my gut says, especially with Baker Mayfield kind of proving he's the guy, I think it gives them even more incentive to bring him back because this is statistically going to be one of the best seasons of his career with Baker Mayfield, a first-year offensive coordinator, first-year play caller. all of those guys are coming back, so it would make that much more sense to bring Mike Evans back. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, I think with Mayfield potentially being back, the chemistry that they've had. I mean, they clearly have a connection, right? It's not like it's totally like James Winston, Deshaun Jackson. Like, man, like these two can't get on the same page and this and that. But like Baker Mayfield has a clear connection with Mike Evans, and I do think Mayfield coming back would help actually Evans' chances of coming back because there's more certainty at who's at quarterback. If the Buccaneers let Baker Mayfield walk and then decided to, just basically have a gaping hole at quarterback until the draft, well, Mike Evans needs to make a decision on his next team before the draft. He may want to see who the Buccaneers quarterback is. So I do think Mayfield potentially being back in the fold will help that. As far as the contract Evans gets, I don't think it's gonna be over 25 million. I think it's gonna be slightly under 25 million. I think it's gonna be probably 3 years, I would guess. So I think after that I think it would be a contract for him to retire in Tampa Bay. He stated that like he doesn't really want to play much longer. So I don't think it'd be over 3 years. I'd be surprised, even if he signs elsewhere. Like I'd be surprised if it was more than a 3-year deal. So I think that's what you're looking at for Mike Evans. And I think there's going to be some stressful times for Buccaneers fans because I do fully 100% expect Mike Evans to hit the open market and free agency. But I do ultimately think he's probably more than likely back in Tampa Bay.
Final thoughts before we let you go.
Hey, man, keep doing what you guys do. And I listen to you guys pretty much every live podcast. So go Bucs, and let's hope Mike Evans does come back.
Oh, yeah, go Bucs. Thanks for your call, man.
We have another $5 super chat here from Charles Jansen. And it is he said, well, go root for Houston then, since you hate Baker. Baker's our QB, root for him. Well, look, I'm not rooting for anybody. I follow the team objectively. It's my opinion. I don't hate Baker. Literally just said he deserves the right to be the starter in 2024. So we were talking about the pros and cons of drafting a quarterback. I never said that the Buccaneers should flat out just completely draft a quarterback. So, yeah. Sorry. That's is what it is. Like just because a person is on the team doesn't mean that you have to say that they're great. So doesn't mean that.
Caller, you're on the Can of Fire podcast. Who's this?
What's up, guys? It's Richard from the West Coast.
West Coast, LA. Richard, what's up, man?
Hi, man. Bucs are winning right now, and there's still a lot of negativity going on with our team, and we got to be more excited, man. As a fan of this team, we need more excitement from our fans, man. Really, too much talk about whether Baker needs to be extended or needs to be moved on. Season's not over. We have 2 more games. We have a playoff push to make. We have the Saints to beat next week. Like we need to put our energy into like our team whooping some Saints ass next week to claim this goddamn division.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on the line this week, and I know that after 4 wins in a row, it's hard to not walk around like everything is hunky-dory, but you do make a valid point in the fact that, listen, the job's not done. Kobe Bryant said it best. The Bucs have not clinched the NFC South division as of yet. There's still 2 games on the schedule, and they have to win at least one of them. That's not a sure thing either, based off of the inconsistency that we have already seen from this football team in the 2023 season. Neither of those games are a foregone conclusion. So I do think some people might be looking ahead a little too quickly here because the Bucs do have to finish the job. And they've done a great job convincing me that they can potentially, I don't want to say make a deep playoff run. That's not what I'm getting at. But they could do a little bit more damage to a playoff opponent than I thought they could this time a month ago. That is for damn sure. But just like you said, Richard, I think a lot of people might be quick to put all their eggs in one basket. Your thoughts, Evan, on where the Bucs are and obviously where they still have yet to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do agree that Richard is right when he says, like, look, this week is the only thing that really matters. And it's also like, yeah, you could win the South by, beating Carolina, but like, don't you want to beat New Orleans at home, winning the South, clinching the South at home? That's what you want to do. You don't want to go into that week 18 game with any sort of pressure or anything. So,
well, and on top of that, I'd love to see them clinch a positive record. Because, last week, the final game of the year against Atlanta, the Bucs couldn't care less about that game. They had already shored up the NFC South, and it could be a similar situation if they end up beating New Orleans and going to Carolina. Like, you could see a lot of the backups play. It'll be interesting to see how they approach that. But I just want to see them finish with a positive record. I thought that even with Tom Brady at quarterback, it was a little strange to see them just settle for the end of the regular season last year the way that they did. And it's neither here nor there to sit here and argue on if that affected the momentum of the team headed into the postseason, but I would argue it did. I would like to see them finish on a strong note. They're playing their best football of the season in December. Could you imagine what kind of good it would do for this football team to finish the year winning 6 games in a row and getting to 10 wins after being a 4-7 football team? That'd be incredible. It would be comparable to, the winning streak that they had at the end of the regular season in 2020, which led into that incredible playoff run, Super Bowl victory, won 8 games in a row, which is a franchise record. If they could pull something similar to that off, the momentum that they would have going into the postseason would be undeniable, and there wouldn't be many teams in the NFL who would accomplish what the Bucs have been able to accomplish over the last month. But Richard, final thoughts before we let you go, my friend. We got one more caller.
Oh, okay. Hey, look, Baker, he's making a case for comeback player of the year. He's making a case for offensive player of the month. Like, let's be excited for him, man. You know what? Ever since he announced he's going to be a dad, like, there's a motivation behind there now. It's not just him. It's not just his wife. It's just not, we're a job. It's livelihood, man. It's another mouth to feed. And when you become a parent, your thought process changes, man. It becomes more than just yourself. So I'm happy for him. Early on, I wasn't big on Baker. I wasn't big on Trask. I just wanted to see how it played out. But with everything, how the recent success of this team, man, it's very exciting. And I'm super hyped about it. And last thing I want to end on is, guys, a little downward spiral here. Can we bitch about the stupid penalty on Devin White of the roughing the passer?
Yeah.
God damn. All right. I'll let you guys go. You guys have a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Go Bucs.
Happy holidays. Go Bucs. Richard, always good to hear from you, my friend.
West Coast.
All right, final call of the show from the 423. Caller, you're on the Cannon Fire podcast.
Hello?
Who's this?
Oh, hey. Calling you from the Smoky Mountains in East Tennessee, the interior Smokies right next to the North Carolina-Tennessee border. How y'all doing?
Beautiful.
Good. How are you?
Well, up here in the mountains, we say a hair short of Jim Dandy when you're getting ready to go to the shop, put the log in the fireplace, and play some guitar and just have some moonshine. So it's going to be a good evening.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome.
First of all, let me say I'm not really prone to make calls in like this, but one thing that's been frustrating for me, as I'm not really a Bucs fan, I'm a Baker Mayfield fan, because I used to live in Oklahoma and I watched like all of his games. Moved up here to East Tennessee. He got drafted by the Browns, and I wasn't really an NFL fan. I was a Baker fan. And one of the things that I noticed when he came in the league was how the NFL actually called Browns games. It's different than the marquee teams. And larger point, he's had a microscope that, first round draft picks are going to get that. And he had some success his first year under Freddie Kitchens as the OC. And when Freddie got the head coaching job, it totally hijacked him because they brought in, who was the receiver the Browns brought in?
Yeah,
Y'all remember?
They got Odell and they got Jarvis Landry.
Yeah. Now, Jarvis, huge plus. Odell, we didn't know that he couldn't run routes until we brought him in. I mean, literally, the guy could not run routes, and Baker had to adjust to that. That was very tough. So, not being a Baker apologist for him to get a huge contract or whatever, he's had a bumpier road than really any other first-round draft pick that I can think of. The first pick of the draft. When you think about the amount of head coaches, coordinators, just all that crap. Well, anyway, it's been so difficult just getting good content on the Bucs online that I came across your channel, and I was listening to Evan. And Evan, one of the things that I'd like to bring to your attention, it's like you almost downplay Baker's contribution to the team because he hasn't been consistent all year, but neither has his offensive line. And dude, he's not really had a freaking run game except for like how many games? Just a couple, not even very many.
I mean, second half of the season, they've had a couple of big days for the run game early, but nothing consistent. It's taken them 8-9 weeks to really get a solid system going back there.
Right. But I guess my larger point, Evan, is that Baker is the reason why they are doing what they're doing, because the run game just hasn't really been there at all. I mean, from what I've seen. Now, true, they've had a couple games where Rashad looked like a world beater because he got like 60 yards or whatever, but that's not a lot. The knock on Baker in the past has been, they've got Nick Chubb and they've got Kareem Hunt. They've got the best running attack in the league, but you can't say that now about Baker. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is when they get into the playoffs, how the refs will call the Bucs. Because here's the deal. If you remember when the Browns were playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional game, that non-call for the helmet-to-helmet on Rashard Higgins was one of the biggest criminal acts in NFL history, in my opinion, because the ref was standing right freaking there with his hands on his knees looking at the dude getting drilled in the freaking noggin. And so I'm going to be interested to see how they call Baker, call the Bucs, from here on out. But I just wanted to kind of bring that to you. It seems like that the popular thing to do in sports media is to give Baker these backhanded compliments. It's like, and looking at the larger picture, he's really had to go through more than any other first pick in the draft that I can ever recall. So anyway, I'll get off here and listen to you guys respond to that. Have a good night.
We appreciate your call, man. Have a great night. Yep. Evan, he gave you all the ammunition he had, pal. What are your thoughts on where we stand here?
Yeah, obviously, appreciate the call, of course. And, he's right. The offensive line, sure, has not been consistent at times. The running game, especially the first half of the season, was not very good. The thing I would say, though, okay, we talked about, this run game has really stepped it up in the last few weeks, right? Okay. They're on a 4-game winning streak. That's the last few weeks. Before that, when the run game was not good, they were 4-7. So, that's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about Baker Mayfield as a guy who can elevate the others, even when the run game isn't great, that's sort of what I'm talking about there, right? I like Baker Mayfield. You can go back and listen to those shows in March right before free agency, right? When we were discussing, you wanted Gardner Minshew over anybody else.
I was, yeah.
And I mean, Gardner Minshew's played fine. He has. He's played. I mean, Colts might make the playoffs. But the one I wanted to sign was Baker Mayfield. I thought that had the most upside. I thought, and the most maybe bang for your buck kind of. Is where contract he could get versus the production that you would get out of it. So, He's right. The offensive line has been inconsistent, this and that. He had the run game in Cleveland would certainly help, and I understand. Like obviously, yeah, a non-existent run game is going to hurt a quarterback. It hurt Tom Brady last year. It's hurt Baker Mayfield at times this year. Like I definitely get that. I'm not trying to do backhanded compliments or anything. I just said again, 10 minutes into the show, I said he should be the team starter in 2024. Like. It's not crazy to me to think that maybe he won't be the long-term solution, but he's the best solution right now, and that's okay. And where the Bucs are picking the draft right now, yeah, Baker Mayfield is probably the best option for them for 2024, and he is played well enough to get this team from out of the gutter basically to where like he probably wouldn't be back next year, right? Like they were 4-7, you go 4-8, 4-9, like Todd Bowles ain't back, and then you probably aren't back, and and kudos to him. He's played really well. He's bounced back from some struggles. Obviously, there's some things to nitpick. There's always going to be things to nitpick with a quarterback, but you just hope that you can overcome those. My big thing is this is just my opinion. Like, I think he can win you a playoff game. I don't know if he can win you a Super Bowl. And this is my personal team building philosophy. Until I can find that guy who I believe can win me a Super Bowl, I want to keep searching for it. So when I find that guy, that's when you stop, right? Right now, I don't know if Baker Mayfield can win me that Super Bowl. I'm not 100% certain that Baker Mayfield can win me that Super Bowl. And until I am, I want to keep trying to find that guy.
I think the biggest takeaway that I had, and this is going to be something you can fold into the argument for Baker Mayfield, is the rocky path that he's had in the NFL as a first-round pick. I mean, let's face it, there's not a lot of first-round picks who have been put in his position who still have a starting job. There's not a lot of first-round picks who have bounced around.
And this was Baker Mayfield's last chance. This was it for him.
It was, and he absolutely knocked it out of the park. We're sitting here talking about a contract extension in his first full season in over 3 years. I think he was dealt a shitty hand in Cleveland. I do. I think they absolutely screwed him over. I don't know why they decided to move on, but they did. And I think as an organization, I think as a fan base, I have seen it, but as an organization, they're going to regret that move. They will. They will. They have.
They are still winning.
Yeah, I guess they are still winning with Joe Flacco, but God forbid you don't sign Joe Jesus to come to town. Then where is that team right now?
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson clearly wasn't the right investment. You're winning more games with Joe Flacco than you probably would have with Watson this year. So I do think at the end of the day, there is a ton of upside to Baker Mayfield, and I'm probably a little more eager to buy into it than you are, and that's okay. Everyone has a different opinion, and that's my favorite part of this podcast is that we get callers who can call in and berate you for 5 minutes because they don't agree with what you said about Baker Mayfield. You've made a lot of enemies. That's fine with me. You've made a lot of enemies in our chat room this year with your takes on Baker Mayfield, but I wouldn't rather have it any other way because that's the beauty of this. I think if we did a podcast where every week we just jumped on here and we agreed with each other for 30 minutes, it wouldn't be that entertaining. I don't think it would be. I don't think I would get a lot of entertainment value.
That's not what when I'm listening to especially a sports podcast, like I don't want to hear a bunch of yes men, that are just sitting there and just, yep, this is good, all right, yep, see ya.
I think it's going to be a fun conversation. I think it's obviously a conversation people love paying attention to, but there's a lot on the line for Baker Mayfield, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, this is a huge investment they are potentially about to make, and these last 2 weeks of the regular season are going to help confirm or deny any suspicions they may have about Baker Mayfield before potentially giving him that contract extension. We have gone long today, and we are going to go a little bit longer. It's not going to be that much longer. We're just going to wrap it up. I didn't think we were going to be talking about Baker that long, but we would be remiss as we talk about the big day for the Buccaneers defense against Jacksonville.
Oh, boy.
We got to talk about the return of Devin White. We made a huge deal. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but we made a huge deal about him not playing against Green Bay. I mean, the NFL made a huge deal about it. The Bucs were getting investigated for lying about injury designation.
I believe they still are.
They might end up getting fined. Like, this is a bigger deal than we thought it was, but at the end of the day, we talked about how him being inactive due to a coach's decision against Green Bay kind of thought that was it, and then all of a sudden he's playing again against Jacksonville, gets an interception, half a sack, only 4 tackles on the night, but it's his first game in like a month.
We got one more super chat from our friend Charles Jansen. It's so much more entertaining when we have disagreement. Besides, Evan is so much fun to rip because he is a good sport. Appreciate all the super chats, Charles. Yeah, you've been an absolute rock star tonight with the super chat. So appreciate everybody super chatting. But yeah, definitely appreciate it. And yeah, love the conversation, Charles, for sure.
So we were just talking about Devin White. We were talking about his role on the defense. I mean, this is still the last ride for number 45 in a Buccaneers uniform. I think
that was
decision,
good. That was good. I like that.
Right. Yeah, right.
Like the horses.
Yeah,
and I like that.
Pun intended. So
Did you do that? Was that on purpose?
Maybe.
No, be honest. Was it on purpose?
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right. All right. I didn't. I was gonna give you credit. I was like, okay, like even if it was an accident, I was gonna give you credit.
I got one more in the chamber here for you. Devin White is gonna ride off into the sunset with a contract extension with another team. It's not gonna be Tampa Bay. The sun has set on that old Western, and it is what it is. I mean, he won a Super Bowl. He was one of the better players on the defense for the last couple of years, regardless of the inconsistency and I guess the decline. He's gonna be another team's problem next year. But him coming back into the game, I mean, what are your thoughts on where we are? Is it just kind of a non-issue? Is it, Devin White going to be taking over snaps from KJ Britt and Servassier Dennis these last 2 weeks? Is that kind of what we can expect?
He did. Like, it's look, he played well. Okay, like we have to give him credit where it's due. He played well. The interception was actually a really good catch, really good coverage. He was blitzing really all over the place. The blitzes were hitting and stuff. And when this Bucs defense, when they can blitz and it gets home, like this is how good they can be. And he played well. Devin White did play well, but at the same time, like he's not gonna. He's not going to be back next year. Devin White played 63 snaps, and KJ Britt played 3. So, Devin White played. Like, it was, and he's probably going to play next week. Like, it's going to be the same thing. So, we will have to wait and see how he plays the last 3 weeks. Maybe it gets him a little bit of bump in a contract. Doesn't really matter for next year. But if it can help them, if it can help them, win a couple games here, I'm sure they would take that on his way out, because at this point, like, I don't think he wants to be back, and I don't think the team wants him back. So I don't see a way any sort of contract agreement could end up, being agreed upon.
Yeah, I definitely don't think this ends in a happy ending between him and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think, what I take from it is the Bucs doing him a solid. Go out here, play some meaningful reps here at the end of the season. We know how important these games are. If he can continue to play well and he can put some good tape together for other teams to look at, it's going to help him in the long run. So, it would sour the relationship even further. I don't know if that's possible, but it probably would if the Bucs just benched him and did not let him play for the last month of the season, knowing the situation this team was going to be in with a playoff push. So I can understand it. I know why they did it. I just wanted to address it because we hadn't talked about it on the show. And Devin White's return, especially with a couple of big highlight reel plays against Jacksonville, was something a lot of people were talking about. But man, it has been one hell of a show. Want to say thank you to everybody hanging out, from all the people who were chatting live on YouTube, to anyone who called in, to all the super chats, everyone disagreeing with Evan and saying how much they hate him and don't listen to our podcast because he's on here. Regardless, we're glad that you're here, and we're happy to have had the support that we have had throughout 2023. And just under a week, it'll be 2024. We're getting ready to do it again throughout that calendar year.
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
And just under a week, it's somebody's birthday. Somebody's. Somebody's turned the big 5-0. Somebody's turning
yeah. Who told you that?
I'm sorry. I got you and James mixed up. My bad.
Yeah, our good buddy James. Be on the lookout later this week. We have got more Tampa Bay Buccaneers content right here on the YouTube channel as well as our podcast feed. We will have our game preview show, should be live on Friday, as we look ahead to this week's game against the New Orleans Saints.
A massive one.
Yeah, Saints hate week. And it is going to possibly be the most important game of the season, as the Buccaneers are just one win away from clinching the NFC South for a third straight season.
And also potentially the first time in franchise history that the Buccaneers will win the NFC South for the three straight seasons. So
talking about history, if the Bucs win next week, we could also be talking about the first undefeated month of football for the franchise since December of 2020 when they were 3-0, and that's when they started just going on an absolute tear that would become that Super Bowl 55 playoff run. And we all know how that ended. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to wrap up the regular season.
And actually looking at it now, since the NFC South was created, there's only been 2 other times where a team has won the division 3 straight seasons. That was the Carolina Panthers from 2013 to 2015 that won it 3 straight years, and then the Saints won it 4 straight years from 2017 to 2020. So the Buccaneers have a chance to put themselves in that company with a win on Sunday.
Bucs on the brink of history. We'll talk to you more about the game later this week. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcasts. Best place to go for updates on the show, and of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. You can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_Daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. Anything on the slate this week?
Going to be looking at the New Orleans Q&A with the SB Nation site. Then also, X Factor as well. And I'm not sure. I'm debating on whether to say this for the offseason or not, but I was going to take a look at some stuff, about Jason Light and about, his offseason because he killed this last offseason.
Should be a good one. I am looking forward to it. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter, at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. We'll talk to you later this week. Thank you once again for hanging out with us tonight. It's going to be an exciting end of the season. I know I keep saying that, but it's hard to not want to buy in, obviously because of the recent performance, but just the turnaround this team has made and certainly have made it a December to remember. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Devin Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.